Hooligans! We back with another preseason special. This one will actually be short this time. I'm serious. Just have a couple quick updates that I figured would be best suited for the podcast. Then I want to quickly touch on a couple things that we can explore and then talk about what's coming up next. So this one will be short. I guarantee it. So I'm not going to waste any time. Preseason, episode 5 of the Hooligans League podcast. Let's go.
It's time!
Every day I'm hooligan. Every day I'm hooligan. Every day I'm hooligan.
All right. So, short agenda. Updates from the latest episode. That's one. A potential opportunity for us to think about. That's 2. And then a preview of the next few weeks. Pretty straightforward. So let's jump into first the league updates. So first up, we have Sleeper. Welcome to Sleeper. Obviously, we've moved there. Big move for us. I was certainly excited. Didn't know what direction it was going to go until I saw Andy say that he was in. And I knew if Andy was in, that meant at least most of the league was going to be in. But literally everyone was in or just didn't give a fuck. So big news. I know there's not much for us to do on the app now, but I definitely recommend, get on to it or the site, experiment, watch their tutorial videos. They recently made some updates, so it even looks a little bit different than it did last week. I'm kind of liking what they've done so far. Do some mock drafts. Chow brought up a great point. He's very used to doing the Yahoo drafts. Most of you, if not all of you, have not done a draft on Sleeper. Their draft platform is awesome. It's super easy to use, but you might want to do a mock draft just so you can get comfortable with it. Personally, I don't care if you do, because if you end up picking someone that you don't want, that's on you because you didn't prep. This will be the 1 year that you need to get used to a new platform. So here is my one warning. Go do some mock drafts on Sleeper so you can get used to the tool. Also, note that today will be the last day that I use our text chain to post the podcast or any really important announcements, questions, because they get buried and people miss the podcast or they miss the announcement or they miss the document. I'm going to be posting anything that's vital in the Sleeper app from here on out, and I will be pinning it until it is no longer vital. And I'll be tagging you all, so you'll all get a notification. It should be very easy to find, and it'll be pinned. So even if you don't really want to do it then, you'll be able to easily go back and do it later. So I will be making those adjustments moving forward from today. With that said, that will increase traffic and notifications, messages, and shit on the Sleeper app. And you may not want all of those notifications. You might have muted our group chat from time to time. If you would like to be more intentional about what notifications you get from Sleeper, there are settings that it's easy to do this. There's nothing going on now, so you really won't be getting many notifications. So I personally probably won't be changing this until the season starts. But if you want to do it now, here's how you do it. On the top right of the app, there you'll see 3 little dots. Click those 3 little dots and you'll see notification settings. Once you go to notification settings, here's all the different types of notifications that Sleeper can do and probably does by default. Scoring notifications of players, when games start, player injury news. I mean, those are probably things you want on, but if you want to take them off, you can. You can set it so that you get a text when really important things happen. You can have things move to email. It's up to you. So those are the general notifications. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see Maynard Hooligans League. Click that and you can set your league notifications. And so that you could turn off notifications for every chat message. Maybe you don't want to be notified for every chat message. You could change that. You could do that for league mate messages. So if we're chatting in the thread, you could turn those off theoretically. I'm not sure I would do that. You can have it notify you when people make transactions. You can have it notify you when people update their trade block. You can get player news. There's just a lot of commissioner transactions. So when I update things in the league settings, you'll see it. Lots of things in here. The one thing you definitely do not want to remove is at the bottom, there are mentions. So that's when I tag the whole league, or if someone directly responds to you, you get a notification. Strongly recommend you not turning that one off. Probably also don't want to turn off the league mate messages as well, but if you do want to mute it from time to time, that's how you do it. But most of this stuff is important, and I probably won't turn much of it off, especially right now, because it's hard to know how often these things will be happening until the season starts. If you keep scrolling down, you'll see there's notifications about your specific team, so you can get injury statuses for your players. You can set it so you only get notifications for your starters. There's just a few more options in there, so check them out. You'll also see on your home screen that there are some tutorial videos in there if you're interested. I would just keep playing around with it. Keep playing around. It's a new tool. It'll take a little bit of time to get used to, but I promise you it'll be very easy once you do get used to it, and you will be grateful of the amount of resources that are available at your fingertips at any given second. So that's Sleeper. I'm going to be using it more often from here on out because it's just a little bit more organized than our group chat. And then once the season starts, it'll really get popped off. So that's all I got there. Now for the second update. So the bench, I guess it was the bigger question. It was one we really had no idea which direction it was going to go. We have our vote results in. I've shared a couple ideas with a couple of you who've reached out and asked about it. But the results of the poll was heavily in favor of shortening the bench, 8-4 to be exact. To me, that's a clear win. But I'm not, ignorant of the fact that there are still 4 people who were voting against it. And I know that at least a couple of those 4 were heavily against it, if not all 4. So I've come up with a proposal on how to handle this. And honestly, it's a pretty conservative one. It's a very small change in the scheme of things, but is a move in the direction of where the votes were. And I figured we could start small. And if this is still an issue next year, or it's still something that, most of the league wants to move it a little bit further, then we'll do so. But I figured for this year, we start small and really try to address the points that were coming up when people were voicing why or why not they wanted to do this. So let's get into the proposal. As you know, we have 7 bench players and 1 IR slot currently. What I'm proposing we do is move it to 6 bench players and 2 IR spots. So we are actually keeping the same size of the bench potentially. You can still potentially have 8 players on your bench at any given time. But throughout the year, not every team will be able to hold 8 players. And what I really like about this move is that it does shorten the bench, especially early on in the season, because not everyone will have 2 IR slots. So that does increase the waiver pool a bit. But it addresses two of the, I think, the biggest concerns that came up in the group chat. So there's one, but when injuries happen, people get screwed and they have to drop players they like, because if you have a quarterback off and a wide receiver hurt and a running back hurt and maybe your kicker's on a bye week and your tight end's on a bye week, you get screwed. We've all been there at some point, if not last year, in recent years, where we've just been killed with injuries. And this allows those teams who really need an extra bench slot to have them. So that issue of injuries isn't a concern at all. If your team's beat up, it's basically the same as last year. What it also does is that it prevents from the rich from getting richer. So if your team's perfectly healthy and you're cruising, you don't get that 8th bench spot. You might not even have 2 bench spots, and you might have to make some tough decisions. And you might have to cut someone that you want to store on your bench during bye weeks. And I can't feel bad if that's your case, because you're in a position of power, and you have to then make those tough decisions. And so I think this solves the 2 main issues. One, having in a deep league being screwed when injuries come up, but 2, in a deep league, not letting the rich get richer and just store tons of players that they plan to trade, or they just kind of rot on their bench, and then when an opportunity strikes to move them for an inflated value, they can. So minor change, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. I do think this is in line with what the league has shared in the chat and with their votes. So this is my proposal. I'll be putting this in a poll in Slack, got work on my mind, in Sleeper, and we'll vote on this. The one additional piece with, never mind, I'm thinking about for the next piece. So yeah, vote. I'll have a poll for this in Slack, in Sleeper, and let me know what you think. If this isn't aggressive enough, then let me know. But I'm feeling like this is where we'll go. The other new opportunity that I mentioned is pretty exciting, and totally get it if you just want to kick this can until next year. Happy to do that, because we've already gone through a lot. We've already made a lot of decisions. I just added another one. But this is something I mentioned in the last episode. This is the rule where we add an extra game versus the league median. So Sleeper has a setting where you can add an extra game versus the league median, and I think it balances out the league a bit, and it allows luck to not be as big of a factor in determining who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. So I took a screenshot from Sleeper's website, and the way that they describe this, for those that aren't as familiar or didn't get it in the last time, is essentially you get a second matchup every week. So you play your guy, and you either win or lose, and you go 1-0 or 0-1. And then you have a second matchup, which is against the league median. And so if you beat the league median, meaning you were one of the top 6 scoring teams, you'd get a win. So you'd go 1-0 there. Or if you were at the bottom of the league in scoring, the bottom 6, you lost to the league median, you'd go 0-1. So you essentially either go 2-0 in a week, you beat your opponent, and you were top 6 team. You go 1-1, where you either beat your opponent but lost to the league median, or vice versa. Or you go 0-2, and you lost to your opponent, and you were bottom 6 in scoring. And the purpose of this is really just to create a fairer option, knowing that you can't play defense against your team, knowing that often people lose to someone but outscored most of the league. Or we might have someone who won and they just got really lucky and happened to play the worst team in the league that week. I really like this. I haven't been in a league with this setting, but I've seen it on podcasts. I've seen people discuss it, and I've personally been very interested in it. I was going to dive super deep into this and see what last year's records would be if we had this, but realized that was going to take way too much work. So what I did instead was find some examples. So there are some prime examples just in the first couple of weeks of last year. So one in week one, I saw that, where is it? Looks like Silverman was top 1, 2, 3, 4. He was top 6 in scoring, but lost to Rick, who is the league's highest scorer. So he went 0-1, but he would have went 1-1. It also looks like in week 2, okay, so I was second in scoring in week 2 and lost to Caveney. So I went 0-1 when I should have went 1-1. And Caveney was the best scorer that week. He went 1-0. And now he'd be going 2-0. So that's really what that looks like. I'm not going to dive through all of these matchups. I did find a couple good examples in the season, really good examples. So week 8, we had Jovi versus James were two of the top 3 scoring teams in the league, and Jovi beat James, even though James put up 155 points. And you can see this is week 8. James only had 5 wins on the season. It's really tough. He had one of his best weeks and lost. That would, if we had this rule, that would helped him a ton. And then in week 14, here's the one you'll all really like. Jovi almost took out Chow because Chow only put up 103 points, which was the 3rd lowest in the league. Chow went 13-1. And this could have been a loss because almost everyone outscored him this week. So these are just examples of how your standing will go up a little bit or down a little bit based on how you do. So I really like this. Just some like quick notes, since I didn't break it down, I found some examples of like how someone might slightly go down. So Chow was 13-1. We all know this, and he was last in points against. Because no one was actually close to him in the standings, he'd still probably be in first, but it would have been a little bit closer come to the end. Andy was second in points, but ended up 7-7, almost didn't make the playoffs. Pretty absurd. I was first in points, was 8-6. I had a small chance of not making the playoffs at the end. Probably shouldn't have been the case. Caveney was 7th in points, but came in 10th place. He should have had a stronger chance at making the playoffs. Then you have Dan and Chris Santola. Dan made the playoffs, but was 11th in points against, so he got a lot of easy victories. Maybe he would have been a slot lower, really fighting for his playoff spot, not clinched in the final week. And then Chris, he was 7th, but last in points. So all those people below Chris, maybe they would have had, an extra win against Chris, or would have been closer to him in the playoffs. So people with this rule, it just takes some of the luck out of it. And I'm for that, because I do think there's a little too much luck in fantasy football, given how many hours we invest into it. But if you're not into it, we don't have to do it. But I did want to bring this up because I do think it is just a great feature, and it could just bring a nice element to the league. So at the end of the season, you'd actually have 28 opportunities to get a win instead of 14. And if we do this, another thing we can explore is adding some prizes or changing our prizes. Reminder, we added the weekly prize to best loser, that $10 prize, and the $25 end of season to most points against, to kind of do this. We wanted to compensate people who got screwed every week and throughout the season. If we add in this rule, then that's really the compensation for this. So we could explore doing different things. We could, take this money and move it to a different prize. We could have a new weekly prize. We could put this money back into the playoff winning pool. We could give your money back. We could go back to $200 buy-in. I'm open to whatever. I'm cool with keeping it. I'm cool with changing things up. Whatever we want to do. So if we decide to add in the league median, then throw ideas into the chat on what we can do with this extra $165 that is now available. So yeah, so that's it for today. Explore Sleeper, play with it. Don't wait until the draft. Get comfortable. I'm going to be using it more. I'm going to be putting podcasts in there, polls, questions, announcements. It's going in Sleeper. I'm not doing it in the group chat anymore. We can still talk trash in the group chat and do whatever in there. I don't care. We don't have to move everything to Sleeper, but I will be making my announcements there. We need to make a call we need to approve the bench proposal. So I'll have a poll in there. Answer it. And let's just get that done. And then the league median thing. We got to make a decision on that. Those are the 3 pending questions right now. I won't be making any announcements or doing any more votes on a podcast. So this is the last podcast that's really related to finalizing our league format. All of that will be done on Sleeper. I have like a wild work schedule, hence me being so tired and a little over the place. And it's going to be like that for the next few weeks. So I'm probably not going to do a podcast for a couple of weeks. And then once I return, it'll be focused on league history, diving into recent years in our league as a whole. It'll be a fun one. More just entertainment, less business. I'll also, throw in that our league draft lottery event is coming up. So that'll probably get sprinkled in there, but it'll mostly be fun, no business. So go on Sleeper, do the polls, send me money if you hadn't. And then if you're in the golf tournament, do the damn golf doodle so I can find some dates to try to lock it in. So that is this week's episode. Didn't fully bring it, so I apologize. But when I get back in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be ready. So thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for making this the best league ever. I'm out. Peace.
And that's where it all is going forward on Seattle.
Given the nature of this presidential race,
Seattle.
did
Seattle.
you find it helpful to talk to
Seattle.
your players about this? If any of your players talk to you about this, are there any
Seattle.